Hi, you're listening to Scribble Talk Talent, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundram. We will be sitting down with our industry veterans to dive deeper into their unique abilities, passion, interests, hobbies, to explore how their unique abilities are connected to their success. So without ado, let's welcome our guest, Jamie Ninneman. A quick intro. Jamie is an industry expert with over 22 years working in customer-facing roles across IT spectrum, focusing on enterprise software and related services. In his current leadership role at SAP, he's both the global lead for bid and proposal as well as the head of global shared service organizations. Previously, his experience includes leading services organizations, defining and executing enterprise transformation strategies, and managing key customer relationship. Jamie was recently awarded APMP Fellow and was also past chair of APMP International Board of Directors. So more about Jamie in episode 35 at Scribble Talk. But this episode is all about hidden Jamie. So let's go, Jamie. Welcome to Scribble Talk again.
Thank you so much, Bhaskar. It's a pleasure to be
here. Jamie, behind the global operations, bid and proposal and the shared services, there are so many components, right? Your education, your family, your friends, the environment, career, and interest, and more. And if we kind of look back into Jamie Ninneman, without getting into detail, what differentiates Jamie? What do you think are your unique abilities, Jamie?
Oh, good question. I think one, I'm very adaptable, and two, I think that I'm not afraid to try something, and if I don't know how to do it, I'll try to figure out a way to do it. I'm not afraid to go out and learn and to figure it out on my own. Hopefully there's someone who can help me, but if not, I'll do the research.
That's very important, Jamie. I think especially because the path that you have chosen obviously means that you never box yourself into this is what I'm going to do. You always evolve, as you can clearly see, global lead for bid and proposal as well as shared services. That comes with its own transformation and other things within yourself and within your organization. Anything that you picked up from your upbringing, early life that says, you know what, these are some of the little things, even when I was very young, I was adaptable. Anything comes to your mind?
Yeah, so I definitely think that I'm a product of a lot of my upbringing. So I came from a family who went through some different levels of adversity. And so we had to move around a few different times and, switch schools a few different times, all just part of the normal ups and downs of life. But because of that, I think I became fairly accustomed to a certain level of change. And I didn't look at it like that when I was younger, but looking back, being able to, relocate and then sort of rebuild and just kind of bounce along with a lot of those things. And I think what it helped me to do was two different things. One, it helped me to be able to compartmentalize a little bit, which means that I can switch from work mode to home mode to another mode fairly well. And then secondly, it allowed me just to, I think, be more comfortable with change and with kind of rolling with the punches, so to speak. And that's been very useful for me. It's something that I continue to try to build on and continue to try to evolve. But for me, I think that's something that has carried forward well.
100%, Jamie. I think, if listeners would have listened to Jamie's episode, I think, on one side, Jamie, successful career, APMP Association recent fellow, but on the other side, Jamie worked in fishing boats in Alaska during college days, and Jamie also was a long time into martial arts competing and learning. Then last time, Jamie, when we spoke, you were learning guitar. Are you still learning guitar, Jamie, or is it you're now well proficient, you are all good?
No, I'm still learning guitar. Definitely. I still take lessons every week and I participate in one of the studios or the school's bands. So for me, it's still very much, even though it's been a few years, still very much the beginning of all that.
Wow. That's amazing. I think, when you add this fishing boats, moving stories, then when you add the adult learning, and also martial arts, guitar, etc. Every single thing would have taught you something, right, Jamie?
Correct.
Yeah. Anything specific that you say, you know what, before martial arts, this is how I approached it. After martial arts, this is how. Now, having learning guitar, I'm seeing this difference in me. If you want to peel one layer at a time and then see how these things are actually helping you, kind of thing, that would be great.
Sure. I think that there's a certain thing that's a continuity across all of these. And so every one of these experiences, just like anything in anybody's life, is going to teach them something new, because they themselves are either flexing different sort of analytical muscles or different physical muscles or things along those lines. You know, martial arts taught me many different things because the experience of learning it combined with the physical challenges and the competition and all the rest of it. I mean, it constantly teaches you lessons. And then guitar, it's a very different sort of situation. You know, it's a whole series of different sort of skill sets. But what I find that's really kind of interesting, and what a lot of these have continued to teach me, is if you talk to my children, they'll be like, you're always doing something, and you're always doing something. You're involved in a lot of different things. And so whether it's my family or whatnot, you're never too late to try stuff. That's one thing, is not being afraid to be like, all right, well, you know, I'm 44 years old. Well, I'm going to pick up guitar. You know, I didn't start martial arts. I did not actually start martial arts till I was in my late 20s. And then I got heavily involved and did that for years and years. And I just think that one of the biggest lessons that a lot of this continues to remind me, and it's something I firmly believe in, is that if you want to go do something, I mean, barring some sort of physical limitation that doesn't allow you to do it, then go try to do it. There's never, I know so many people are like, oh, that's so great. I've always wanted to learn guitar. I wanted to learn piano. I'm like, well, go try it out. There's no reason why you can't, unless, you know, monetarily or physically or something else, there's an obstacle, which is obvious, but and understandable. So for me, I mean, each of them will teach you very, very different things. The guitar has definitely been learning a lot of patience, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice to be able to do that. And so it's been good. But I think that when I look back on a lot of these, Bhaskar, a lot of it really has to do with just the desire to try new things and to find things that you find fun. I think it's important to have those in your life. And, you know, I do a lot with my family, but I also make a little bit of time for this, and it's good.
That's the brilliant point that you nicely ended there, Jamie, because one of the challenges people face is, here we go, I can't even balance my work and life, let alone find time for my own passions and interests, etc. How did you kind of, on one end, you know, you're a senior leader within SAP, managing not just one role, but two different global roles. Then you're associating yourself with the APMP, you know, working on that side. Then 4 or 5 passions, then family. I know you are a brilliant, beautiful family man. How do you structure your life? Give us a little stint of. I know it's not perfect. I know when you are working as a leader in a company, you're not playing a role as a family man. But when you're playing a role as a family man, you're not really giving time for yourself. When you play your time for yourself, obviously your kids are going to come play, Dad, you're not with me. So how do you kind of balance all these things together?
There comes times when certain things become the focus, and they need to become the focus of the priority. And so I think that what's important to understand is that not all things are always equal at all times. And so what I mean by that is, I mean, obviously family will always come first to me. That's just the way it is. Family is my core and will continue to remain my core. And so one, you know, taking a surface level, you have that. But then, you know, my focus with APMP and with the guitar, or with some of the other stuff that I do, you know, I sit on a board of director for a local area here and things like that. It all comes in waves. And so what you do is you just kind of understand that, okay, for right now, you know, APMP needs to take a little bit of the priority of maybe some of the other extracurricular, because there's a big important, you know, BPC Europe or BPC Denver was here, or you've got, you know, ongoing with a committee or something along those lines. And so you find that you need to focus. But then, as we are well aware, that's not always 100% commitment 100% of the time. And so that will wane off a little bit. And when you know that, then you can dedicate times towards some of the other stuff. And so it's okay. It's all about being comfortable with that. I love APMP. It's a huge part of my life. but it doesn't need to be consuming 100% of my time. And it doesn't need to be consuming 100% of my thought. And neither does my work. And so you have to be comfortable with being able to ebb and flow, so to speak, on that. And there are times in which, I get to practice my guitar just a couple times a week or once a week, and I have lessons. And then there are times in which the band I'm part of is ramping up. And so, we have to do a lot more. So you just kind of balance it out, to be honest. And it is a challenge. The other thing that I also find that has worked well for me is that some of my passions that I like to do can also involve my family. They can also be things that are things that we can either all enjoy or I participate in. So as an example, my daughter is currently involved in the high school musical production, and they need parents to help, volunteer to build sets and to do things like that. And so I'll dedicate some of my time, and it gets both. I'm able to participate in something that my child loves. I'm able to help and give back to the community, but I'm able to accomplish both at one time. And so I know we'll talk about some other activities later on, and many of those were actually born. The one we're going to talk about today was actually born out of participating and helping my children in some of their extracurricular events. So I think that's also part of it. If you can find things that can be enjoyed and also serve multiple purposes, it kind of allows you to focus on things you may enjoy, but also get time with your family or help with the community.
That's brilliant, Jamie. I think that's really brilliant. Jamie, how important it is to say no to certain things, because once you know, okay, this is, if you allow yourself to be in situations where it's just going to take a lot more than what's required, then obviously that has a knock-on impact on the things that matters more to us, which is family and stuff. How do you say, your principles of saying no, and how has it helped you?
We're all, I think, inundated with a tremendous amount of training and mentoring around the ability to say no. But I do firmly believe in it. And for me, I think being able to say no is really dependent upon a combination of either your confidence or your comfort level, and not really worrying about everything and how everything affects everything. So what I mean by that is, I do say no to some things. It's not always easy to say no. Sometimes it comes with a little bit of anxiety even. And I think all those things are normal, but realizing you can't control it all and realizing you can't make everybody happy in every instance. When you come to those realizations and you realize that it's okay to be a little anxious about that stuff, but then it's also very much okay to realize that not everyone is always going to be happy all the time, then it comes with a sense of peace that you can make these decisions. And so, we always want to try to do the right thing. We want to try to help people. We want to try to make the right decision, but sometimes there's always going to be kind of those tough decisions, the lesser of two evils, et cetera, et cetera. And you just have to learn through experience and maturity just a little bit on how to be okay with that. That's really what it comes down to. It's not about being dismissive. It's about being like, all right, well, I realize that, but I'm going to say no because I really don't like that situation, or I'm going to say no because, I really want to spend time with my kid, or I'm going to say no because on moral or principles, I don't agree with that. And so, I think that's tougher in your personal life sometimes than it is in your professional, because professional, we're often given certain political avenues or process avenues, but I think you just have to be comfortable with it. It just takes time, and you kind of have to look at that.
Nice, Jamie. I think there is a lot more of you that we covered in the Scribble Talk episode 35, but today it's about bingo calling. So
that's right.
So let's get into bingo calling, Jamie. So, but first of all, what's bingo calling?
All right. So when you asked me for some of the different hobbies, when we were communicating in regards to this podcast, we talked about several different things. And so when I listed I play guitar, I do a little DJing, I do bingo calling and things like that. Bingo calling is one that's a little bit different. Bingo calling the game is bingo. And the game of bingo is pretty well known across the world, right? The idea is that numbers are called, you have a board in front of you or multiple boards, and depending upon what numbers are called, you mark them off on your board, and you can get some sort of winning pattern, whether it's a regular bingo pattern, which would be like 5 numbers in a straight line of any kind, or when you get into the game, certain games are all kinds of different patterns, the letter T, a square, a diamond, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea is that if you get those numbers, you then win a prize for that round. And most bingo events consist of multiple rounds that are played. So the game of bingo, and it dates back to like I had to actually, you asked me, Vasquez, you said, like, what's the history of bingo? And I actually didn't know the answer to that. I had to go look it up on Wikipedia, but it dates back to like the 1500s in Italy or something.
Wow.
So it's a well-known game, and culturally it varies. Where I am located in the East Coast of the United States, specifically around Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area here, bingo is something that is fairly common. And there are some churches which will do it on a regular basis because it's a way to generate revenue for the church. So, once a month they'll have a bingo event. Most everything that I'm doing, it's just all charity work. So I'll do it because somebody needs to run a fundraiser for someone who lost a loved one and they're raising money, or a school is doing it, or a program at a school, like a musical or drama program, needs to earn money to be able to stay in production, things like that.
Wow. I mean, looking at it from the outside, bingo cards, I thought it's like, the first images came to mind is Las Vegas and casinos. Other things.
Well, it is in essence, like it is sort of, it's a gambling of type, right? I guess you would say, right? You're hoping your numbers get called, and if you get called, you could win money. I mean, many of them win money, many of them win big prizes here. Some of the prizes are worth hundreds of dollars, and so it just kind of depends. But yeah, I mean, I think they'd probably do it in Vegas as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I think as an outsider, because it's a learning curve for me, and I'm totally fascinated. I mean, so when somebody now come and tells me, okay, we are and playing bingo in a church, for example. Before I was like, oh my God, why do they play gambling in our church? But now it's part of it's part of charity. It's a kind of a nice event-based thing, and it's a collective thing. Community comes together. It's so nice, Jeremy. So when did it all began in your life? How did it happen, bingo calling?
So my 3 daughters were in a local church play production. So there's a local church near where I live. My wife went to this church growing up, and they every year would offer a play, and the play would bring in a lot of young children. So it was mostly for people who are 8th grade in the United States. So think 13, 14 and younger. And so we got involved with the church. We did it for a couple of years. They do one production each year, and the church would call bingo, but their normal bingo caller, this gentleman, for whatever reason, couldn't do it. They were all talking about it. And my wife, my wife said, I bet my husband could do that. And so if you need some help, I can ask him if he'll call bingo. So she approached me, and I said, well, yeah, I mean, I'll help out the church. I have never done it before. I don't really know what's involved. I've played bingo a few times. So the gentleman there kind of taught me how to do it. And so I went and I did it. And it worked pretty well, I think, for my first time. And then it became something of a fact of, well, we need to do a bingo event to raise money. Do you know anybody who could help us? I think Jamie called bingo before, and then I did another one as a favor to a friend for a different church, and then just word of mouth. And before you know it, people are asking you to do it for all kinds of different events because they need someone to help run it. So that's really how it got into it. I fell into it because my kids were in a play and the church needed some help.
Wow. And is it true that, a bingo caller, it takes There is a lot of skills and knowledge involved on the way the whole game works. Jamie, maybe distill it a little bit for us. How does the whole thing work, and how many players, and the minimum, maximum, and how do you play?
Sure. So I'll give you an example. I had to call bingo last weekend and actually the weekend before that because there are a lot of fundraiser events that are going on. And so there is no maximum number of players necessarily. There isn't. I mean, I think that most of the time, most of the events I'm doing are probably around 150 to 250 people who will play bingo. And most of the time, the ones that I'm doing are adult-only bingo. So there'll be things that are charity events. So people they'll be themed. So let me give you an example. One of them that gets played quite often here before Christmas time is something called gift card bingo. And what it means is people will pay $30 or $25 or whatever the amount is to get into the game. And with that will come the ability to play 10 bingo games. And they are given a sheets of paper. These are bingo cards. They're pre-printed. And so they may get 3 cards to play for each game. And each game will have a different pattern. So diamond, cross, T, something like that. And then every round people will win, and they'll win one of these gift cards. And most of the time these gift cards range anywhere from, let's say, like $100 to $200. It just depends on the event and how big it is and what they're doing. And so the way that it works is people will all come in, they sit down, they bring food. A lot of times they bring alcohol themselves. They'll sit at the tables, and it becomes a very big social kind of scene. A lot of it is about winning, but a lot of it is about going out and having fun with your friends. They bring a lot of food, snacks, they sit down, they eat, and they'll play each game. And then after we get done with the 10 games, there's often a lot of times at these events, raffle baskets. So baskets that people will put together, and you can buy chances, and they do drawings for the raffle baskets. And it just becomes sort of a big kind of fun event like that. As it relates for bingo calling, it is a bit of a learning curve and experience. It's a little bit more of an art form, I would say. And the reason I say that is when you call bingo, I use software. The software is projected up onto the wall so people can see the number that's called. They can see the previous numbers. They see the pattern. So there's software that you can purchase to help run this stuff. But it's all about managing the time. And so depending upon how many cards most of the people are playing at one time, depending upon what the pattern is, things like a coverall, which means every spot has to be called versus like a regular bingo, you're going to vary the timing on how you call the numbers. And so you may call them every 14 seconds, you may call them every 12 seconds, you may call them a little bit slower. So that's where the experience comes in. I mean, what you're actually doing is not complicated. It's not. It's one of those things where, numbers are generated by the tool and you have to keep track. Most of the skill set is in the facilitating and the emceeing. So when they do these events, I'm in charge of basically being the face of the event. So you get up and you have to talk to the people, welcome them, why they're there. You have to explain the rules, explain how it goes, remind people about the raffle baskets. And so most of it for me, the experience and the art was really around learning how to facilitate and MC an event. And so in combination with the bingo. So that's kind of just a real basic overview. So numbers will be called, they'll mark it on the paper. When they get a bingo, they raise their hand or they yell bingo, and then we check the numbers. And if they win, they win. If there's a tie, we have tiebreaker processes to choose who wins, things like that. But it's fun. Most people do it because they enjoy the social element.
Yeah. And what's the longest bingo calling event you have attended, Jamie?
Most of the time, the events will run four and a half hours, but the actual bingo calling part of that will probably be around 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours. It just depends. I mean, a little bit of it is luck. I had last week 2 games that were over in like 10 numbers. I called 10 numbers and people just had lucky cards, and within 10 numbers, it was done. And so those are kind of very fast rounds. So some of it can go quick, but most of the time you're looking at least 2 hours of actual bingo gameplay.
And obviously, bingo calling, there are some favorite bingo calling words, and there is some names to it as well. Jamie, maybe give us a light to some of your favorite bingo calls and some of the popular bingo calls as well.
Well, I mean, obviously when someone wins, they yell bingo. Sometimes when you call certain numbers, people will make joking comments because of what the numbers sound like or what they are, things like that. So they can get kind of interesting, to be very diplomatic about it. But what you'll find is that there's always good characters who are in the crowd. There are always people who are like, who will yell out things meant to be funny, and they're half serious, like, give me the right numbers, or they'll be like, I'm so close, and someone else will win and they'll jump up and be kind of comical in nature. But so you see a bunch of characters, so to speak, at some of these events. Most of the time it's all in good nature. Most of the time. There have been some instances at other bingos. The bingos that I don't typically run are the ones that are run all the time. They're standing bingos that certain churches will run, and some of those people at those bingos can get very, very serious about it. And there have been some incidents around stuff like that, but most of the time people are there for a good time. What you'll find very common is that there are a lot of common patterns that people will play. So when you go to different bingo events, there are maybe 13 or 14 or 15 sort of standard patterns. So as an example, large square, small square, large diamond, small diamond, the letter X, 4 corners. So these are all patterns that people must have numbers called in order to win. And so what you'll find is across a lot of the games, you'll see a lot of similarities in the types of games you're playing.
Definitely, Jim. I think, it looks like it's very mathematical, logical at the same time, very entertaining. I think these days it's very important to sit down, like, without technology, right? Without phone, without laptops, and play stuff with people. Looks like this is one. And is there any, like, a smallest number and the largest number in the bingo calling games, Jamie? I mean, like, is there
it doesn't really matter. So in the United States, you play with a pool of 75 numbers, so 1 to 75. I think in the UK it's 1 to 90. But in the United States, it's 1 to 75. And it doesn't matter what your number is. Like, the thing is, it's not really that mathematical. I mean, you're just matching. So your bingo card has, I think, 24 numbers in a free space on it in the United States. And any one of those 24 numbers could be anything between 1 and 75. So it's just luck of the draw. So I may say, oh, it's B11, right? So the column B across bingo, column B, and the number 11. And you may have it, you may not have it. And if you have it, you mark it off. And it's really just that simple. So what's nice about the bingo game is you need to pay attention and listen, but it's not complicated. It doesn't take a lot of skill to play it, right? You're really listening and just matching numbers that have calls. So it's quite fun, and it can be done. A lot of those bingo games that aren't adult only, a lot of kids like to play too, because it's not hard, right? It's not like there's strategy involved in it, is what I'm saying. They can just listen, and it's kind of luck, to be quite honest with you.
Thanks, Jamie. I think, while you're talking, I was just visualizing playing this with my kids and thinking what I could end up doing. But is there any I'm sure there are some online portals and sources for this type of things, right, Jamie? Anything that you recommend?
I mean, there are a billion of this. I mean, if people want to play bingo, you can download apps on your iPhone or on your Android or whatever mobile device you have. I think that there are 5 billion sort of things out there. I think that if anybody is interested in getting into calling bingo, there's a few software packages out there. And if anybody's interested, they can direct message me. I mean, I'm happy to share what they are. They're not expensive at all. But I think that if you just search the word bingo, quite honestly, there are so many out there that you can pick and choose kind of whatever theme you want. It's kind of like those Candy Crush games and whatnot, Bhaskar, you know, like on your iPhone, right? You can get one that's Stranger Themes themed, or you could get one that's Monopoly themed, or whatever. They have all kinds of different versions.
Perfect. Jimmy, I think at the end of the episode, I think we will offline, if you can drop a note on some of the softwares, we'll add it to the resources so people can access
Sure.
it. What was the largest take up for you? Any big wins or any funny incidents during this bingo calling events?
Well, so, you know, there's a lot of money that can be made by some of these different organizations. I mean, there are a lot of charitable organizations, and I did one a while ago for a church. The church needed a new roof, and so they decided to run a bingo, and they opened it up to people, and they were able to take in a net amount of $7,000 just by running a bingo event for one night.
Wow.
And so that's a lot of money for a lot of these very small organizations, you know, and they don't do it all the time, right? Because you can, just like anything, you can overdo it and people won't show up. But I think that's, you know, you see that kind of a number every now and then for these things, for the small people. So the church needed a roof, and that's why they did it. And they were able to raise that money. But comical stuff, you know, most of it, like I said, is the characters. So I had one last weekend where I was doing a bingo for my daughter's drama group. They were trying to raise money because the program is self-funded. And so they have to pay for all their own expenses, sets, costumes, things like that. And so they were running one. And one of the guys was very, very close to getting his number, and he was getting kind of loud about it and excited. You know, he needed one more number to win, and he really wanted to win and whatnot. And the girl on the table behind him yelled bingo, and he jumped out of his seat, turned around and said, "Sit down, sit down. You're not going to win. I mean to win." Of course, it was his niece, and it was all good. It was just in joking and fun like that. But you see good characters like that. And so for me, you know, a lot of it is just the craziness that you would see with the people, and it gets kind of comical that way. Just the big personalities. There's a lot of big personalities at these events.
Totally, Jim. And it looks like, I think every country, every state has its own nuance of this bingo calling thing. And while I was sending you questions, I was just checking how they play in UK is different to how they play in US, and even different states in US play differently.
Correct.
In calls and stuff. But yeah, that's fascinating, Jamie. And yeah, I mean, like from your thing, I think looks like bingo calling is something that you started doing it for the charity event for your daughter. Now you are a pro running events. And is there anything you would like to say, guys? Play bingo calling. This is the reason why you should play bingo calling.
Well, you know, it's funny. I mean, it's all charity work for me now still too. Like, I don't do this for revenue. I just do it to help out because it's something that you learn. But I think that if anybody is interested, I mean, you find a local bingo place, you might have a little bit of fun with it. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I enjoy doing it because it helps out the community. I'm not a hardcore bingo guy, but a lot of times it's fun if you can get a handful of people together. You bring some food and drinks and you sit down, and just like any kind of good social event, you make fun of each other and tell stories and have a good time and do that kind of a thing. So I think that if you want a venue in which you can do that, I mean, at least in the United States, I can't speak for the UK or outside. I've never actually played there, but these can be kind of fun and silly at the same time. So it's good.
Definitely. I think playing with people, community driven, and playing online for your own thing as well, Jamie. I think, do you find differences in the online bingo games versus what we play offline with people in a charity event?
Of course. I don't care for online bingo because, again, this is my personal thing. If you're in it just to win the money, then maybe you'll like those types of things, because then you're in it for the activity of playing the bingo and possibly winning. Most of the people that I know that go to play the bingos, like I said, they obviously want to win. But most of the time it's because it's the social aspect. For me, it's the social aspect. I have no desire to play bingo online, zero. I couldn't care less about it, because the act of actually playing bingo in and of itself is not the draw to me. It's the social event. And so I'll give you another example. I love to take my girls to professional sporting events. We'll go to like a hockey game in Philadelphia or something along, or a Phillies baseball game. I really don't care about the sport that much. I know that there's a lot of people in Philly who probably not appreciate that, but I didn't grow up in professionally following sports family. But for me, I love the activity. I love the event. For me, it's about taking my kids to having fun, the excitement, all the people. It's about going to the event. So for me, I think, and for a lot of the people I know, it kind of follows that same suit. It's about going to the event. People don't really sit back and be like, oh God, I really feel like playing bingo. There's probably some out there. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying most of the people I know, they don't feel it like that. It's the opposite. It's the activity of going to an event and having the event, bring that type of a social involvement and engagement.
Well said, Jamie. I think that was amazing. I think when I searched for bingo calling, I think there were a few numbers that was given and there were a few names that was given, which is number 7 says lucky 7.
Yep.
And then 22, 2 little ducks or something. I was quite 42 stands for Winnie the Pooh, and I think it's amazing. I think even in the US there were a few names that 45 stands for Cowboy's Friend.
Well, it depends on where you are and what games. I mean, like you had said before, there are a lot of different games that could be played. There's death bingo. There's all kinds of other types of variations to the game, and depending on where you go, what they kind of like, in those states, or what's sort of culturally common, it varies quite a bit. I never really played bingo, quite honestly. I played bingo maybe once before I came and moved to Philadelphia in 1996. And so for me, it was a learning thing. It's very common down here. It wasn't really common where I grew up. And so it's kind of interesting when you see all those differences.
Totally, Jim. You know what? While you were talking about what I was thinking about was, do you remember the very first thing you told? What's your unique ability? Is adaptability, is your ability to evolve, right? And what's most interesting thing about bingo calling is how it evolved, has its own game, right? As we talked about, it has its own variations. There is a combinations of bingo calling, and every country plays it differently. And I'm sure future of bingo online and stuff. That's quite classic, that how you as a person chose something that evolves, and then you get energy because it evolves and you evolves. There is always something for you to learn and grow. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's just funny. I fell into it, and the reason I like to do it is because I do it for charity work. So I like giving back to the community, and I like to help a lot of these people. I know these people, or I know these institutions, or even if I don't know them, that most of the time they're all for really good causes. So for me, I mean, there's an enjoyment in being able to give back. And that's a lot of the reason why I'm motivated to do it. In the beginning, it was helping the organizations that my kids were part of. And like last weekend, the drama program, my daughter's part of that. So you're definitely motivated to do that. But most of the time for me, I don't get paid for this stuff. I do it because it's a good cause. And so I think that for me, that also we do a lot of things. Like Sebastian, you asked a good question earlier around how do you make time for all this stuff? And you have to choose the priorities, I said. And so for me, I like to give back to the community where and when I can. And this is something that seems to be popular, and it seems to have a good impact. And it's something that a lot of people will need a little bit of help with. And so I can do that. And honestly, it feels good. I like it. I like being able to give back to the community that way. So if this is a way that I myself have fallen into something that I can help others with. And it's kind of comical because people are like, oh my God, that was, you call bingo, you do all that. It's really not that complicated. You just have to sit down and learn it. And that's it. That's all that it is.
100%, Jimmy. And you know what, even for you to take the time from your busy schedule to just share about this, for me, it's giving back, for you're taking time on a short notice. And for me, it's the thing, people need to evolve. What COVID has told us is, life is fragile. Do something that you want to do now. Don't wait. And people like you who have always been a beacon of hope, it's amazing. So thank you for sharing this, Jamie. Two more questions, but before we go, I thought I'll introduce a fun round called positive to negative. So, so if I say, for example, you're going to choose 5 people in your life. It could be anybody, somebody whom you know really well, and you don't need to name who they are, or you can name them. So it's up to you. So when I say, for example, you know the positive aspects of them, but you just need to say that the same thing in the opposite side, which is like, Jamie is very adaptable. Jamie is very evolving person. You just have to say, I've never seen a person as rigid as Jamie. He's the most person who never learns, always in the same place, etc. What that means is then people can see, okay, it's actually the opposite. Is it okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what you want me to say. I got to be honest with you.
You're just going to choose 5 people.
Yeah.
And you know their positive aspects.
Correct.
You are just going to say that in the negative tone.
Okay.
So it's as I told you, so people will say, and so if for just to say, Jamie is very adaptable, Jamie is very evolving, then you just have to say opposite. Jamie is the most rigid person I've ever seen. Jamie always never learns. He's always the same. So we can then say, oh my God, he's the opposite of the person is the right answer.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's start with Jamie. You can say Jamie in the negative side.
So Jamie in the negative. Okay. So I'm talking about myself. So I would say Jamie is the most serious person you've ever met. He doesn't like jokes. He can't stand to play practical jokes on anybody. And his children are totally incapable of predicting what he's going to do in any situation.
That's brilliant. You are a champ now, Jamie. You can choose somebody else, 1 or 2 of your friends, anybody who can actually appreciate, for you to. This is actually a positive thing. And normally we ask the question, who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career? This is exactly the same thing, but we are just spinning it the other way around.
All right. So I would also say my mom is the least hardworking person you'd ever know, the least compassionate person you'd ever know. And she's absolute trash at giving advice in life and professional stuff. Total trash on that. My father, same thing, lazy as a bone, just can't get up and do anything. He's completely reliant on everybody else. Never, ever has he made anything, grown anything himself. And as a result, nobody can depend on him or my
mother. You're a pro, Jamie. Anyone? Duval?
And my children, they're as uninspiring to me in my life as you can possibly imagine. And I really, really wish that there was anything I could appreciate about them that would make me motivated to be who I am and be a better person, but unfortunately no.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Jamie. Brilliant. So, Jamie, I think while I was planning this whole theme, there was something that came across which is called the Great Resignation that's happening in 2021. Obviously, many companies are losing talents because people are making interesting decisions on what they want to do in life, and many people are choosing to do different things as well. From 2 questions just on this: one, as a leader in one of the global, big company, how do you think organizations should make, changes to retain talent, which is a corporate question based on what we discussed. Second one is, why do you think people need to find time to pursue their talent?
All right. So let's tackle the first one and then we'll tackle the second one. The second one especially has multiple parts to it. But The answer to the first one is talent retention is nothing new. I think that what is always evolving and changing is the dynamics that are surrounding why talent is choosing to move on, what is important to the talent. So if you look pre-COVID, all right, look pre-pandemic, there was still the conversation of talent retention. And I think that when you go to certain market units, like I have global team members all over the world, and in some market units, the economy was building up. And there was a huge influx of businesses looking for certain talent. And so talent retention at that point became, because there was such a high demand, that people had the opportunity to make movement from one company to another and to increase their living wages and their salary and benefits quite substantially. And so in that case, that was about competitiveness across companies. If you go to other geographies, it could have been a cultural aspect. And then, so it's always changing. And there was even a lot of conversations, if you go back and you look at, Gen X versus millennials versus Gen Y, Gen Z, things along those things. And, if you look at all the studies and all the conversations, different things are motivating these different generations. Some are motivated by the intrinsic value of what they do, the moral aspects versus salary versus title versus this. So none of this is really new. I think that what you have seen with the pandemic is that a lot of people have been forced to look at their own personal situations, to be very introspective. I think it's put a lot of pressure on a lot of people, and it's just changed people's perception on certain things. Some of them, it's life is short. Others are, I realize I'm in an area where I'm not as stable or as comfortable, or, certain things now have taken a different priority or importance within their own perspectives. And I think that the only way as a leader that you can then effectively try to do the best you can at talent retention is to understand those dynamics. You have to understand your workforce. You have to understand the people. Before all this happened, I used to talk about, or, I myself also understand the fact that the motivation for each individual is different. Some people are motivated by money, some are motivated by recognition, some are motivated by professional growth, etc. Some are motivated by the type of work that they do. And you have to understand that, well, the same thing's true in this. And you have to understand what's driving their own professional and personal needs. And when you understand that, you'll understand it. I know people who have now had to take on caring for people as a result of the pandemic, because maybe they were financially challenged. And so people have taken people into their home, maybe, health-wise, someone has declined. And so now their situation is very different, either because their work-life balance needs to be adjusted or their monetary aspects. So there is no formula, Bhaskar. What there is the conscientious understanding as a leader that you must get down below the surface level. You must understand your workforce. You must challenge your managers who report to you to really understand their workforce, to be able to be familiar with the situations. And, it's hard because even if you do understand, you're not always capable of meeting those needs, because, maybe the person really wants a lot more money. Maybe they're justifiable even asking for this money, but maybe there's just no way to get them that money. Or maybe it's just the role that they're in isn't as flexible as they would like it to be. And there's not a lot you can really do about it by nature of the type of work and the dynamics of the environment of that work. It really requires someone who needs to be available 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and can't have a flex day of every Friday off or something. I mean, there's just all kinds of different permutations. So, it's not always 100%, but if you want to mitigate it, you need to understand your team, and you need to understand the dynamics that are driving it. Because as much as everyone says, oh, it's being driven by this, it's never one thing. And it's never going to be necessarily always the same thing across your team. It would be naive to think that.
That's it, Jamie. That's it.
Okay, so the second part, right? Well, remind me again on the second question.
The second part is, on one end, yes, it's challenging for organization to keep the talent. What is it they need to do to mitigate? Second one is, COVID has also given employees or everybody in the world an opportunity to pursue something new or reinvigorate what they have done in the past. I advise them why they should do that.
I don't think that this is something that should just be the result of the pandemic. I always think that it's good in our lives. I mean, everybody should always be asking the question as they move forward, because that's how you grow and how you challenge yourself. I mean, there's nothing wrong with finding something you love and sticking with it. I think that even if you find something that you truly love, like there are people who are like, I'm going to be a proposal manager. I never want to manage people. I don't necessarily want to grow in the organization in terms of role and responsibility, but I love doing what I do and I want to stick with it. And I'd say, okay, that's nothing wrong with that. But then within the boundaries of what that is, there's always opportunity to grow. There's always opportunity to maybe try to do something different. I think we all should be looking at the situations that we're in with an open mind on, well, okay, maybe I could do it different. Maybe I could do it better. I mean, that's what we talk a lot about at the APMP webinars, right? Growing best practices. But then I think even within your own life, you know, do I like what I'm doing? Is there something I need? Are there skill sets that I could improve upon that will help me or maybe get me closer to where I want to go? So I think that the pandemic forced it for a lot of people, because again, I think it made a lot of introspective thought amongst the population. But I think that's something that we should all be doing. And I don't think it needs to be doesn't always need to be some life-changing level of seriousness applied to it. I think it's just always a general, hey, let me just double check. Let me think, you know, is there something different I want to do? Is there something fun I want to do? And I think the important part of that is not being afraid to put something down. I think that that's an important part of it. You and I talked a bit before about, you know, martial arts and then the bingo calling and this and that. There are things that I have started. I did them for years. I loved them. And then I decided I wanted to try something new. And it wasn't because I didn't like that anymore, but it was because, oh, well, you know, this also sounds really fun. And you do that for a few years, you know, and it's all what you want to get out of it. There are some people who want to start something because they want to master it, and that's going to be a very long and continuous journey. There's other people who maybe want to go try it because it sounds like a lot of fun. I'm in it to try it. I'm in it just to enjoy it, to see what it's like. I'm not necessarily in it to master it. And so I do that for 2 or 3 or 4 years. You have a lot of fun with it, and then you find something new. So it's also being not being afraid to put something down that you've been doing for a while, if it makes sense.
Very powerful, Jamie. I think definitely the way you kind of closed it was beautiful. I mean, you don't need to put too much in your mind. Just go do it. If you like it, pursue a few years, yeah, even longer, yeah, but go try it. You know, it's beautiful, Jamie. Thank you so much, Jamie. I know this was totally off topic. You know, I could have chosen 100 topics on the way you run bid and proposal center chat services. But what's more unique about you is, yes, you can do that, but you know, it's this all-round personality of Jamie that fascinated me more. But thank you, Jamie. Thank you for joining Scribble Talk Talent as our very first guest, Jamie. Welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And it's always been a privilege to have you, host you here, Jamie. Wish you, your family, everybody around you, all the good health and happiness. Thanks for articulating your talents, passion, and I'm sure it's going to motivate a lot more. Please do continue to inspire us and stay safe, stay healthy, Jamie, and look after yourself.
Will do. Thank you, Bhaskar, for inviting me and having me on. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wish all the same back to you, your family, and all your listeners. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.